Getting to know the Bible. Father Claudio Doglio. The Gospel according to Mark. The arguments. Mark begins to narrate the public ministry of Jesus with a typical day set in Capernaum on a Saturday morning, a feast day, a meeting day in the synagogue. In the synagogue, while Jesus teaches, a demon-possessed man interrupts him and Jesus sets him free. He performs an exodus, an anticipation of the Easter exodus. People are amazed. They ask themselves, "What is this?" And they replied, "It's a new teaching." Jesus' teaching is of a quality that was not there before. And, above all, the novelty lies in the fact that the teaching is united with authority. Jesus says and realizes what he says. Mark continues the description of Jesus' day in Capernaum by presenting the moment of noon at home with his friends Simon, Andrew, James, and John. Then he left the synagogue and immediately went to the house of Simon and Andrew. We notice Mark's typical insistence on the verb immediately. Serves almost as a structured thread to hold the episodes together and to create a quick connection between one thing and another without too many interruptions. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and immediately they talked to him about her. He approached her and made her get up, taking her hand. The fever left her, and she began to serve them. Compare this account with Matthew's parallel text. You can easily see that Matthew has a simpler, more sacred, essential text that presents Jesus in a higher aura, whereas Mark portrays the episode with some very human, bright and lively, picturesque features. Jesus goes to lunch at some friend's house. They are talking about this woman who is sick. Jesus approaches, wraps his arm around her, takes her hand, and pulls her up. It's a significant gesture. Jesus takes sick humanity by the hand, lifts it and embraces it. It makes her capable of a new service. And that woman begins to serve them. She starts cooking for the whole group. Matthew will say she needed him. The episode in Matthew instead becomes symbolic and synthetic. The episode in Mark, on the other hand, the underlining is much more humane. At the end of the Sabbath, that is, at sunset, the rumor of the miracle performed by Jesus in the synagogue spreads, and all those who had sick people bring them to Jesus so that he can perform miracles of healing. The house of Peter is besieged by people. And Jesus heals many. He spends the whole evening with these people in the midst of the crowd. In the morning, he got up early when it was still dark and went out. He retired to a deserted place and prayed. It is no coincidence that the morning after Saturday is a Sunday. And early Sunday morning, Jesus gets up while others are still asleep. Jesus gets up and goes to a secluded place. It is still dark and prays to the Father. Jesus is a mature man, capable of mature human relationships. He knows how to be with people. He knows how to be alone. He is not dependent to the crowds. He is not isolated. He is a man who knows how to be in all situations. And when people look for him, he lets himself be found and stays with the people, but does not forget the need for the moment of prayer, for solitude, for interiority. When friends wake up and no longer find him at home, they go to look for him in the hills behind the city of Capernaum. And they tell him, "Everyone is looking for you." Jesus reacts by not returning to Capernaum because his mission is to announce the gospel of God to everyone. And Capernaum is the starting point, the beginning of the dissemination of the message. But Jesus does not want to let a group, an environment, a city put its hands on him. His itinerant ministry begins. The very nature of his preaching made it difficult to tell his historical experience because he has done the same things many times. He repeated the same teaching in many similar places by changing villages, entering other synagogues. He always had new listeners and therefore had to start all over again and teaching in the synagogues from Sabbath to Sabbath. He commented on the readings of that day, and starting from those texts, he announced the fulfillment relating to his person with authority. He announced the good news of God. The kingdom is here. It is present. Mark, in order to give a synthetic picture of the ministry of Jesus after the typical day in Capernaum, collected a series of controversies. We find 5 structured stories on a question in which Jesus proposes a new solution, and they are special occasions for announcing the newness of Christ. It does not mean that Jesus had these controversies one behind the other. These are collected stories gathered by tradition and sewn together by the evangelists precisely because there are 5 texts quite similar in structure to highlight the contrast of this teacher with the dominant mentality of the Pharisees and scribes. The first dispute is related to the forgiveness of sins, inserted in the narration of the miracle healing of a paralytic. While Jesus is surrounded by many people, four men want to introduce him to a poor paralyzed man. They remove the branches that make up the roof of a poor Palestinian house and they lower the paralytic on a stretcher before Jesus. It's a particular scene that involves all the participants. Therefore, the attention is focused on that man and on the attitude of Jesus. It is clear that they want a miracle. They want Jesus to heal the paralytic. And instead, Jesus tells that man, "Your sins are forgiven." The scribes present at the speech of Jesus and perhaps in dialogue with him think in their hearts, who does he think he is? Only God can forgive sins. And how is it that this man says, "I forgive your sins"? He is blaspheming. Jesus interprets their thoughts. He knows how to read their hearts. That's why he performs a sign. He says to them, "You have not seen any testable result to my word. Your sins are forgiven." Then, so that you may know that the Son of Man, that is me, has the power to forgive sins on earth. I am going to say another word of which you will see the result conspicuously. He turns to the paralytic and says to him, "Get up and walk." And he gets up, takes the stretcher, and goes away. Jesus made that sign to show that he has the exousia, the authority, the power to forgive sins. Only God can forgive sins. You are right. And I have that power. What does it mean? It is a catechesis done with conspicuous signs of the authority of Jesus. And Mark emphasizes this aspect. Jesus is a teacher who has authority because he realizes what he says. He has the power to forgive sins. Second controversy. After having called Levi, the tax collector, to become a disciple, Jesus accepts the invitation to Levi's house with many of his colleagues, people of ill repute, and is criticized by the Pharisees precisely because it was not customary for a scribe to associate with such people. And according to the law, Jews were not allowed to eat with sinners. There is always a non-polemical contrast. They are controversies. In fact, it is Jesus who presents himself as the doctor for sinners, the one who has the power to heal sinners. The miraculous, magical power of healing the sick is evident in Jesus. He is a therapist who heals the sick, but these signs serve to say that Jesus has a therapeutic power towards every person as a sinner. And thus the reality of sin appears as a disease, a very widespread disease, a disease that kills. It is the sick who needs a doctor. It is sinners who need Jesus. And as the sick person asks the doctor to make him live by overcoming the disease, Jesus offers himself to the sinners as one who delivers them from sin, and they may not remain sinners. Jesus does not go to the house of sinners because they are sinners and that they remain sinners, but he goes as a doctor to eliminate the sickness of sin, to heal the sinner so that he will change his life. I did not come to call the righteous because there are no righteous. I came to call sinners. He came to heal sinners. Third controversy. On the subject of fasting, John's disciples and Pharisees were fasting according to law, while Jesus with his disciples ate quietly. They ask, "Why don't you observe? Why don't you fast?" And Jesus answers with a question of a wisdom type. Can wedding guests fast when they are with the bridegroom? In this controversy, Jesus is presented as the bridegroom. But the bridegroom in biblical tradition is a divine title. Adonai, the Lord, is the husband of Israel, and Jesus claims to have divine titles. He is the one who forgives sins. He is the one who heals sinners. And he is the one who marries the people and allows them to overcome this phase of penance and fasting because a wedding party is in progress. It is the novelty. You do not put new wine in old wineskins. You need new ones. Jesus is the new wine and is forming a new humanity capable of welcoming its newness. Fourth controversy. The ears of corn torn off on a Saturday. It is another episode of dispute. On the Sabbath day, the disciples of Jesus collected ears of corn while crossing a wheat field. The problem is not theft. The problem is that it is a prohibited gesture on a Sabbath day. And they tell it to Jesus. Look at them. They do things they shouldn't do. And Jesus presents his teaching on the Sabbath, saying, the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Man is more important than rules. Religious rules must help man to live well, not to enslave him. So remember well that the Son of Man, that is I, is also the Lord of Sabbath. It is another divine title. Jesus presents himself as the Lord of the Sabbath, the one who has authority over this principle of the Jewish law. Fifth controversy. Still on the theme of Sabbath, another healing narrative within the synagogue. There was a man who had a paralyzed hand. That man asks for nothing. He simply stays in place with his hands locked. Jesus notices him, calls him, puts him in the middle, draws everyone's attention to that situation, and asks, is it lawful to do good or to do evil on a Sabbath, to save a life or kill? All are silent. The theory was clear. They should have told him no. But in the concrete case, it's always difficult to apply the theory and say, in that case, Jesus does not have to heal that man. And Jesus, looking all around with indignation, saddened by the hardness of their hearts, said to the man, Stretch out your hand. Here we have a typical brushstroke by Mark, the circular gaze of Jesus. Many times the evangelist presents the teacher who, before speaking, goes around with his eyes, staring at each one of those present. Then Mark explicitly explains his feelings and says that Jesus is indignant and saddened at the crowd and outraged by the hypocritical attitude of closure, of silence, of religious narrow-mindedness. He is saddened because there is this situation of oppressive religion and saddened by the hardness of heart, by their hard-headedness. The heart in biblical language is the head because they cannot understand. And Jesus simply says the word, stretch out your hand. And that man is freed from his disability. That hand that was unable to move, thanks to the word of Jesus, it becomes active again. He proves that he has power. He demonstrates that he has effective religious authority for man, for the concrete liberation of man. How do adversaries react to these claims of Jesus? The Pharisees immediately came out and deliberated how to finish him off. In chapter 3, verse 6, Mark makes a first conclusion. We are almost at the end. The adversaries have already developed an idea of eliminating him because he is too dangerous a type. But we are only at the midpoint. Immediately after, Mark resumes the story with another summary or another story of vocation to present a series of new actions of Jesus. With his sensational claim to be God, to be the one who truly liberates man,